All right, so today we're gonna make a European buttercream. We're gonna do it the Swiss method. You could do a French buttercream, you could do an Italian buttercream. Italian and Swiss are very similar. They're egg white based. So I've got liquid egg whites, sugar, and butter. A French buttercream would be yolks and sugar and butter. So that's a big difference. It's very rich. It uses a pâte à bombe base. What we're gonna do here is that we have to pasteurize these egg whites. You could use pasteurized liquid egg whites, but I'm gonna show you how to make it from scratch. So the basic ratio, it's very simple. You can follow many different methods, but it's 1 part of egg white, 2 parts of sugar, 2 parts of butter. Since I'm not using liquid egg whites that are already pasteurized, I've got my clean egg whites. There's no fat in the bowl because fat is the enemy of meringue, because essentially I'm making a Swiss meringue and I'm adding butter. I'm gonna add all of my granulated sugar. And this is just granulated cane. I could use unbleached. You could get away with using brown sugar, make a brown sugar buttercream. Coconut sugar, date sugar would give you a little bit of problems because of the texture in the date, but would be delicious. And then I need to take this over to the stove, put it on a bain-marie, which is a water bath, and I need to cook this to dissolve the sugar, but to pasteurize my egg whites. So I'm gonna take this to 145 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm gonna feel, that's why I have gloves on, to make sure I don't have any grains of sugar or my buttercream will be grainy. We're gonna go over to the stove, and I've got my whisk and I've got a thermometer. All right, so we have our egg whites and our sugar. They've been taken up to 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, that's only for raw egg whites. Do you need to cook it? If you've used pasteurized liquid egg whites, you just need to dissolve the sugars. You don't wanna have a grainy buttercream. So this is gonna go on the machine. I'm gonna lock it in. I'm gonna use my KitchenAid whisk now. And then we wanna turn this into a beautiful fluffy meringue. And I could use it just like that if it were going to be for a souffle, or if I'm making meringue cookies, or Swiss macaron if I wanted to. But for this, we're gonna make a beautiful meringue, and then we're gonna add in butter. And I'm just adding unsalted butter. And again, that ratio is 1 part egg whites, 2 parts sugar, and 2 parts of butter. Once you add in the butter, then you can add things like extracts. I could add color. I could add in essence if I want to, if I want to make a rose water buttercream. Always add those flavors and those colors after you've added the butter. This is what's going to give the body to our buttercream. This is what's going to emulsify our buttercream. So we need to make sure that this gets added first before any other liquid flavoring, puree, anything like that, or jams if you wanted to add it. That has to go in at the end. So I'm gonna start off a medium speed. It's gonna slowly creep its way almost all the way to the top of the bowl, about to where my finger is. But I don't wanna kick it on high speed first. I'm gonna let it slowly increase, and then I'll turn it on probably a good medium to high. And I need to whip this until the bottom of my bowl feels room temperature. It's unnecessary to do things like put an ice bath underneath. It doesn't do anything. That's all it's gonna do is cool down the bottom of the bowl. I just need that machine friction to cool down this meringue, because if I add the butter in too soon, then I've got buttercream soup. And then I have to stop, throw this in the reach-in, wait, and then whip it back up. So instead, whip this until it's really light and fluffy. The meringue should almost hold up in the bowl upside down, and then go ahead and add in your butter. So now we've whipped up our Swiss meringue. Remember, there's no butter added to this yet, but I wanna show you how stiff this meringue should look before we add butter. So if your meringue is too soft, too warm, or you didn't properly separate your egg whites and there's fat in the bowl, you don't get this beautiful meringue. So again, this is just Swiss meringue. I'm gonna go ahead and add butter, which is gonna turn it into a Swiss meringue buttercream. So I'm gonna raise this back up. I'm gonna keep my speed on low at this point, and then I'm gonna add my butter in, and I have it at a plastic consistency. So again, that just means that it's not melted. I can press it. This would be what I wanna use if I'm making a butter block. But I'm gonna start to add in pieces, nothing too small. All right, so now you can see that we've got a really nice, almost like a whipped cream consistency. Once we've added all our butter, it's come together. And again, if your buttercream doesn't come together, if it looks granular or if it looks like cottage cheese, just pause, maybe chill it for a moment, put it back on the machine, and then whip it back up, create a little friction. Sometimes I even take a torch to it if my butter's too cold, but you wanna have this nice, beautiful, fluffy consistency when you are done. So it should be nice and creamy, have a bit of a shine to it. For both Swiss and Italian, this is really what you're looking for when you're done. And you could whip it longer. You can, you know, add flavors and colors, whatever you'd like to it, but this is really what we want to see. We don't want it to be too runny. We don't want it to fall out of the whisk. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of color so that when we pipe onto our cake, you can see it. I'd recommend a fat-based coloring, a gel coloring. Don't recommend any water-based colors added to this. So I'm just gonna add a small amount of ivory, and a little color goes a long way, and I wanna make this more muted. I'm not trying to go for super vivid and saturated, but I'm gonna let that begin to mix in, and I can turn my speed up if I need to blend that color in. And then I'll turn it down before I add in. I added ivory and I added just a tint of tan. So I'm gonna stop here, take it off the machine, and I've got a nice, still, beautiful buttercream that's not falling off my spatula. It's holding its shape. Now, because I use the whisk the whole time, I do have some air bubbles. Now, if I wanna knock some of those air bubbles out, put it back on the machine, but with a paddle attachment on really low speed. The best thing to do is to have enough buttercream that it covers the paddle, and just give it 5 minutes on really low speed, and that will slowly knock out your air bubbles. Not so much for piping, but that's gonna be best for when you have to have really nice, smooth iced cakes. And there we have Swiss buttercream.